Well, good Monday morning and welcome to Connect, the California MBA's weekly podcast featuring one-on-one interviews with movers and shakers in the mortgage industry. It's March, so we're going to continue our deep dive into customer experience topics and issues. And we've got a great guest today. I'm excited to get into the conversation with him here in just a minute. But before we do that, let's thank our sponsors over at Accelerate. So if you're looking to close out more loans in 2021, and that should be everyone in the industry here, it's time to experience Accelerate's award-winning customer engagement platform that features lead management, CRM, call routing, sales enablement, marketing automation, borrower engagement, and data intelligence through innovative use of multi-channel marketing, which includes text, social media, email, direct mail, phone, ringless voicemail, retargeting, and much more. And as we always say, if you're looking to catch up with Accelerate and find out what they're up to, make sure and follow Josh Friend on LinkedIn. He's got a lot of great content that he puts out there. And if you wanted to schedule your personal demo, make sure and go to accelerate.com. You can do that there. All right, well, let's dive into the conversation here. I'm excited to welcome in Linn Cook, an old friend of the association here. Linn is VP of Sales at OptifiNow. Linn, welcome.
Thanks, Dustin. Thank you. I really appreciate you inviting me on.
Yeah, excited to really talk customer experience with you here. Linn has been involved with the association for a number of years, and he's one of those idea guys that if you get him on a call talking about whether it's a committee or talking about a conference or a webinar, Linn's got tons of great ideas. So I was really excited to have him on the program today. So Linn, let's start at the beginning here. Let's talk about your background, how you got started in the industry, and how you wound up where you're at now at OptifiNow.
Well, it's kind of funny. I mean, I many years ago, I actually have a degree in biochemistry, which not a lot of people know, but, as it is, I did make my way into the mortgage industry by way of a small company that we started back in 2000 called Meridian Link. And at that time, when we started that company, we were developing software for mortgage credit reporting companies. So it's kind of an incidental sort of entry point into the mortgage industry. But after we found some success in the mortgage credit reporting industry, then as Meridian Link, we actually expanded into a couple of other products and into the mortgage side. We had a pricing engine called Price My Loan, and then from there we actually developed, crazy as it is, we did develop our own LOS called Lending QB. And so by way of just kind of getting saturated slowly into the whole process of the mortgage industry, that's how I became very familiar with a lot of different elements, of the mortgage process and the different sort of software and process efficiency sort of techniques that lenders were looking for.
Yeah. Well, and certainly your degree in biochemistry puts you in the long and illustrious list of mortgage folks who did not get a degree in mortgage banking and set out from the age of 5 to become mortgage bankers. So yeah, it's always a great story. It's always a unique story with everyone in the industry. So I'm curious from your perspective. We're sort of now, it's March 2021. We're a year or so into this pandemic, hopefully getting on the downslope here and moving out of it here as states start to open up. But from your perspective, how has the pandemic sped up or slowed down maybe some industry innovation trends when it comes to customer experience?
Well, I mean, I'm looking at it from more of a standpoint of kind of an indirect impact on innovation, right? I think that we've obviously seen that the mortgage industry was one of those very few industries that really somehow benefited from what occurred industry-wide and economy-wise in terms of the mortgage industry really expanding and gaining just tremendous volume. I think what that shifted from an innovation perspective is, sure, there's always been a lot of great tools, great companies out there, but I think it's more about the underlying sort of financing of these companies that are creating these innovations, right? I think we saw quite a bit of additional investment in mortgage-related technology companies. There certainly were some large and small mergers and acquisitions. I think that has that indirect impact of really funding these companies that have interesting, innovative ideas, giving them greater chance to grow, right? Especially from the standpoint of being absorbed with a larger company. Certainly, you can take a look at, ICE and Ellie Mae, right? There's a great example of a large transaction, right? And what that does is that infuses certainly new money, but new people and ideas, right? To really come to fruition these different innovative concepts they may have had independently, but bringing them together gives them a lot more ability to actually act and create that sort of synergy that you can get when you're combining companies together under a single roof. So I think from that aspect, yeah, I mean, the pandemic has really sped up that side of the development and the combination of companies and technologies that, at the end of the day, I think specific to this pandemic, people realize that the area where innovation really needs to occur is on the underwriting side. I mean, it's always been something that's there, but with the crush of volume that occurred during this period, it really exposed the inefficiencies within underwriting and highlighted those particular areas where lenders want to find some level of efficiency with specific tools. So it's for better or worse, the mortgage industry did very well. Innovation is alive and well. And we suspect, coming out of this that, there are going to be really great ideas that are going to be able to be released out into the marketplace with the funding that's going to be able to sustain it. That to me is the most important part of it.
Yeah, I think you've got a great point there. Well, and I especially agree with you on the idea that, you've got from a borrower's perspective. I mean, the innovation in the front end of customer experience has really gotten to a point where I think borrowers, their expectations once they go in are even greater after they go through that first initial process and go through the initial gathering of information and data, and then there's still this gap of time and sort of the unknown in there where you kind of don't really know what's going on as a borrower. And I think to your point, that's where the innovation still needs to happen, is in the underwriting and the processing of loans.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, regardless of how well you're able to engage with the borrower, if your bottleneck is still at the underwriting phase, they may have had a great online experience, but I mean, if their funding is getting delayed by, 5, 10, 15 days, I mean, you're still going to have an unhappy borrower, right? So, right. Whereas, yes, I mean, I think it's great that you have a lot of great innovation on the front end that's engaging with the borrower, but, a lot of the value, right, as we've seen, is going to be on the back end, right? Those core pieces of technology that are really going to, kind of open up that bottleneck, right? Allow a greater throughput of loans, with less underwriters. I mean, it may require some additional specialization that's adjacent to underwriting to be able to do that. But, I think that to me, that's where it's really interesting. I mean, speaking as someone that's come from CRM space, yeah, I mean, I can see all these different things that lenders are trying to do to innovate and engage better with the borrower. And we're here just to facilitate that. But beyond that, the only other sort of innovation that I really like seeing is better utilization of data, right? I think that there is just tons of very mortgage specific, realty specific data that can be further incorporated into the front end of the process, if we want to talk about that. I mean, we've come across a couple of companies that are able to aggregate multiple sources of data and combine it together to become really actionable, right? So that lenders can be very targeted in the way that they're reaching out on marketing to their customers, right? Be it, whether the customer is a borrower or a broker or someone else, right? I mean, I think that is something that to me is a little bit more exciting, really making good use of data, because, the mortgage industry is a little bit behind when it comes to really not collecting the data so much, but operationalizing it and bringing it to the forefront. So to me, that's kind of the more interesting part of the front end of the process.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, and I think we're still at the very beginning stages of. I mean, if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see that Linn and I are both baseball fans here. And obviously one of the big changes in baseball in the last 15, 20 years has been the sabermetric revolution, just the revolution of using data in new ways to create efficiencies that no one saw before. And I think, to your point, I think we're just at the beginning stages of, really starting to utilize the massive amount of data, to your point, that's out there.
Absolutely.
So let's switch gears. I'm curious your thoughts on this, as someone who's been in the industry for a while now, especially on the tech side. Do you think that it seems in some ways that we're moving away from the approach that, maybe 5, 7, 8, 10 years ago, where just this kind of tech stack bolt-on approach, vendor here, vendor there, and it seems like we're moving closer to a more of a sort of an all-in-one approach. Do you think that's the future?
Well, I mean, I think you have to be kind of careful about that, right? I mean, a tech stack versus all-in-one. Is it really, when you say all-in-one, is it really all-in-one, right? I mean, just because, all these different vendors are owned by a single company, right? And of course, Encompass is a great example of that, right? Encompass, has an LOS, and then they went and they have a CRM, they have all these different tools. But I mean, they really were kind of put together as a result of acquisitions, right? So at the end of the day, LMA may own the LOS and the CRM, but I mean, if the actual products themselves were separate, right? I mean, there's still an integration that's going on. It's still a tech stack, but it's a tech stack within a single company, right? So I think there's that angle of it, but quite frankly, I don't really see that. I mean, beyond like what I said initially of the merger and acquisition of companies underneath a single label, right? Yes, I mean, I think that has value from a financing standpoint, right? From a funding standpoint of that innovation. But quite frankly, look, lenders all have sort of their own secret sauce, right? In terms of the way that they want to either do the front end sales and marketing part of it, or the middle part of the operations, processing, underwriting, or extending back, all the way out into servicing. They have their own secret sauce. They figure out different ways. And in all these different platforms, especially larger systems, I mean, they're so configurable, right? That I don't think it's possible for one company to really truly provide just a complete soup to nuts type of process that satisfies, a lender. I mean, I think, yeah, maybe if you're a smaller lender, a mid-tier lender, yeah, maybe there's some efficiency for you to go that route. But as you scale and get larger, and you need very specialized types of functions, right? For each of those components, lenders always have the ability to go and find their own vendor, go outside of that ring, that their vendor is providing. And again, it's more a function of the fact that APIs are becoming so much more readily available, right? Not to say that APIs are be all end all. I mean, it's still complicated, but APIs do make it a lot easier than it was in the past to be able to connect, all these disparate systems together. And, again, the cost of development overall, I'm not saying that it's cheap, but it's cheaper, right? Whereas, 15, 20 years ago, someone that wanted to make modifications at the code level or at a configuration level, right, was much more expensive than it is now. And so, these lenders, they really can sort of build their own custom tech stack, so to speak, right? I mean, they can really design a workflow that takes advantages, of their, their strengths, and, build that custom tech stack, custom flow, so that, they've got a system that they feel not only meets their needs, but they have really good control over, right? I mean, the one thing that I've learned from lenders is they want to have as much control as possible, whether it's them actually pushing the button or they have someone, a contractor or someone on staff that has the ability to push that button. So from that standpoint, I don't see that this tech stack, this diversity of vendor approaches is going to go away anytime soon.
That's a great point. I think you're totally right. That, I mean, especially as they scale, to your point, I mean, you're going to want that ability to customize and configure, every little thing down to the nth degree to satisfy all the different, process spaces in the process, and really make it fit your individual needs, and whether it's a market need or product need. I think that makes a lot of sense.
I mean, I do see just one comment. I mean, I do see within these smaller segments, right? I mean, if you look at like point of sale providers, I do see them aggregating different components within, right, that segment of what they're serving, right? like Simple Nexus is a great example, or Maxwell, right? Here are companies that started out with just a single core focus of their platform, but then they started aggregating different parts that are adjacent to what they're doing, right? And so that they have a much more fuller type of platform. I mean, I do see that happening as in that segment as an all-in-one, but that just makes it easier, right? For these lenders to say, oh, I'm going to take this group of functionality from this vendor and add it to my tech stack. So from that standpoint, yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of that kind of all-in-one mentality with vendors in specific segments of the process.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Yep. So give us you're one of the experts. If anyone's been to a mortgage conference here in the last 10 years, you've met Linn Cook. And give us a practical example of how marketing automation really does help drive more sales. I mean, you're the sales expert here. How do you assimilate that massive amounts of data that you're talking about and make it practical for LOs to utilize to convert more transactions?
Well, I mean, so if we're starting at like for example, if we start at like the data level, right? That source of that data, we all know about sort of list providers or list companies, right? But if you're able to get a much richer data set to start that automation in the first place, right? If you look at companies like Zoom.info, right? They're a great analogy, right? These are companies that have aggregated, massive databases from all over the place and are continuously updating and scraping data. You look at how different companies, are using that data to drive their initial engagement, that initial top of the funnel engagement, right? And from there, everything can flow in an automated fashion, right? So you say, I'm going to target, let's say I'm going to target borrowers in this particular MSA within this particular zip code that match this particular criteria, right? Let's say you're looking for potential FHA borrowers, right? You use that data to push out your marketing, right? And that marketing can be done in so many different ways, right? It can be done on social media, it can be done via email, whatever method that you have. The idea is then to mobilize that data into an automated fashion that will drive leads, drive interest into a single pipe. It could be a landing page, it could be some sort of video, whatever it is, where you're able to grab sort of that response data from that process and know exactly, oh, here's someone who is now, we qualify them as a marketing qualified lead, right? And there's just the fact that you can tag a specific individual with that label as being a marketing qualified lead. Now you have a whole set of processes within your CRM that just set off automatically, right? I mean, again, the whole point is here, no one has to lift a finger. No loan officer has to type out an email, has to go and find that lead. No, your CRM platform is able to completely identify that lead came in through a specific channel, send out a specific series of nurture messages, right? And then automatically notify the loan officer or your salesperson, here is a sales qualified lead, someone who said, raise their hand, yes, I want more information, right? So right there, you've got loan officers working their regular deal, right? Working with their realtors, whatever it is, and then they're getting this additional influx of leads that are being completely self-generated, through an automated fashion. So there, you're able to, show your loan officers that you're adding value through this process. They don't have to, be aware of anything that's going on, right? So that's that top of the funnel, right? You get to the bottom of the funnel when you've got the loan inside of, your LOS, right? Again, that's where a CRM type of system can engage tightly with the LOS to automatically notify whoever it is, right? Sure, your initial indication is to, yeah, let's notify the borrower whenever the loan hits these different milestones within the loan process. Now, I think that people have known about that for years. Now what we're getting into is, no, it's not just the borrower that needs to know this, right? It's these other parties. It could be the escrow agent, it could be the buy side, the sell side agent, right? Being able to get them incorporated in an automated fashion to know exactly what's going on with the loan process, that's a big win for the originator lender, right? Because now you've got a realtor who says, wow, this is great. I'm getting these notifications on my cell phone, right? I'm getting a text message that says, hey, my borrower, his loan file is at this stage. Oh, thank you. Now I know what I need to do next, right? And so that builds a much stronger relationship with the realtor, builds a much stronger relationship with the borrower. And as we all know, that is what generates additional business.
Yeah, well, and I think that leads us perfectly into the next question here. So, I mean, this year, obviously, we're going to start to see a shift back to purchase transactions from refi. You know, what changes do you see on the horizon from lenders?
Well, I'll tell you what I'm hoping to see. I'm hoping to see a lot of lenders, are saying, oh, I'm transitioning from a refi to a purchase business mode. That means I need to invest more heavily on my CRM and my marketing, right? It's a completely different animal. All lenders know that. It requires a different level of effort, a different level of engagement, right, with both the borrowers and the realtors. So, what I'm seeing is that, what we're hoping to see, look, lenders are going to have a renewed focus on configuring or reconfiguring their CRM to be much more heavy on addressing the purchase market. And then that just ends up becoming an arms race, right? As one lender starts using their particular method for engaging with purchase borrowers, right? It could be a social media method, right? You see one lender that is being very successful in connecting with borrowers in a purchase market on social media. You're going to see other lenders do exactly the same thing, right? Again, advertising, you're going to see a lot more advertising dollars being spent in the purchase market. And what that does, again, is, hey, you're going to have to configure your CRM to be able to collect very efficiently any responses to your advertising, whether it's TV, radio, physical mailers, right? Again, this is mortgage, right? A lot of the same marketing techniques that worked in the past still apply today, right? We can look at all these newfangled ways, Instagram, whatever it is, but at the heart of it, it's still traditional marketing. And with that traditional marketing, you need to have a system that's going to allow you to kind of manage those leads, and then also have that capability to take 10, 15, 20% of your budget, right, and split that off into innovative ways of marketing, be that social media or some other method. And again, your CRM has to have that ability to automatically feed in, pull in all that data from these different data sources so that not only can you distribute the leads efficiently, you can report on them. You can really see what is your ROI on your spend in these different areas. So I think those are the areas that lenders are starting to look at if they're not already doing it. Cost of lead is going to be a big part of that.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think you're right. They should be doing that already. If they're not already, they need to get things in gear at this point, because I think the change is going to come. Without. I think the shift will be gradual, and then at some point we're going to cross a certain point, and then it will be very fast and leave some people behind who are not ready. You mentioned social media. Tell us how lenders can use social media to engage with borrowers right now and build their brand equity specifically.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a tricky thing to answer, right? I mean, I'm not a big social media guy, right? And the only education I know about social media is from my daughters, okay? But I have run across a couple of companies, right? I mean, I think, you look at Social Survey, they've been doing it for a while, right? And they use a particular method to leverage social media to enhance, really the marketability of a particular loan officer, right? But then you have a plethora of digital marketing agencies that have been doing social media in different industries for a very long time, right? And one company that comes to mind is a company called C Squared Social. We've known them for a while. We've been integrated with them. They're a very interesting company because they're using those same techniques, right? I mean, they're using the techniques of doing very targeted marketing, right? Where you're specifying the unique or ideal profile of the type of customer you're trying to reach out to. They dip into all this big data, right, to be able to identify who are those people, and then they deploy a series of methods, right? It's not just putting some sort of post on Facebook or Instagram or whatnot. I mean, they're bombarding as much as they can each of these potential leads that are in your ideal customer profile. They're bombarding them or touching them not only through social media but also through pixel data, right? They can track you in terms of when you're navigating to different websites. Look, I'm an older guy, so I find it a little bit creepy, right? When I go to a website and it shows me an ad, something that I just seen, but it's effective. At the end of the day, it's effective, right? And for sure, lenders are doing this right now. I think the difference is I'm not sure if lenders, like mid-tier lenders, understand how available that technology is, right? I mean, it's
not rocket science.
Yeah, it's not rocket science from your standpoint in that you just tell these guys, here's who I'm trying to reach, right? And they're very effective in doing that, right? And again, it's all about, as everyone knows, all about getting them into the top of the funnel, right? Getting them engaged with your content to the extent that you know who they are. You can then focus your sales efforts more efficiently on those people who are most likely to engage with you. So social media, yeah, I think it's still in the mortgage space. I think it's still a little bit in its infancy, right? I don't think we're seeing it as widespread to the extent where, you and I are on, let's say, Facebook, and we get an ad from a lender and we click on it and we can engage with like a chatbot, for example, right? That's collecting information with you in a very comfortable manner, right? Almost conversational manner, but it's all online. Or with, direct form fills, right? Where it pops open a form that's pre-populated, with your Facebook information, making it much easier for you to submit over some type of request, and then extending all the way out, to, these brands that are following you around, on the internet. So, I'm sure that it's going to start growing very quickly, as we have this purchase market, because it's all about, share of mind, right? Share of time. Right, so lenders are going to want to be able to, leverage that and sort of, elbow out any competitors that may be doing the same thing.
Yeah, and you are 100% right that it will be an arms race that will be, interesting to watch from the sidelines here. So in talking, we've just got a couple minutes left here, so a couple more questions. In talking to lenders and your clients and prospects and just over the years, what do you think, I'm really curious your opinion on this, what do you think executives need to know that they don't know?
Well, okay, so I'm gonna put this into context more suited to what I'm doing.
Without insulting anybody, of course.
Right, I won't insult anybody, okay? But, I think what's important for sales executives to know is that, look, the front end sales and marketing part of mortgage lending is really diverse, right? I mean, every lender has their own particular methods, right? They have their own particular, like I said before, secret sauce on how they do their sales and marketing, and they're very proud of that. You don't want your CRM to be the limiting factor there, right? You don't want to have to be forced to live within the technical limitations, of your CRM, be it, from a functionality standpoint or from an integration standpoint. You want to be able to be on a platform that gives you almost full, complete flexibility to do whatever you want. And, I think that makes people think of sort of that big, CRM company that's out there. That's not your only alternative, right? I mean, I think, people feel like, yeah, I mean, no one ever gets fired for using that company, because they're the biggest CRM company in the world. But the cost that you end up spending because they don't have that specialization within the mortgage space, right? We all know mortgage lending is very complicated, right? And it has, a very particular way of engaging with borrowers. So having to go through that process from scratch from one of these sort of, generic type of vendors of CRM, you're kind of doing yourself a little bit of disservice, right? You may get to that endpoint that you're looking for, but you may end up spending 10 times what you expected, and it's not really a feasible, sustainable solution. So I think, don't look at that company as being your end all be all. There are other companies, that are targeted within the mortgage space that can suit your customized needs. So I think that's one thing for them to look at. Another thing that we noticed is that, data management is a lot more complicated than executives think. Okay, I know their IT, their CTOs and their IT guys, they already know that. But lender executives, they need to understand that your data may have a lot of inefficiency baked into it because, quite frankly, you let it get that way, right? When you allow your data to get duplicated or get messy or get unorganized, that just creates a lot of inefficiencies within your organization. It is worthwhile. It is definitely worthwhile staying on top of your data like it's a garden, right? You don't want those weeds growing. Staying on top of it. If it costs a little bit of money to, sort of allocate resources to, cleaning out your data on a quarterly basis, it's worth it, right? Because if you end up having just a ginormous database where 50% of it, 60% of it is actually not even good data, you're kind of doing yourself a disservice, right? And you're being inefficient for the sake of your own staff. And then other than that, I think where I said that automation is great, automation does all these things, and automatic email, SMS, so on and so forth. I think lender executives, they need to be careful with automation as well, right? Automation can create, unexpected consequences, right? You think a logical rule is going to only, sort of perform within an isolated sort of, your expected sort of environment. But there are a lot of, it's data. Your computer is a machine. It only does what you tell it to do. If you're not very specific, then it may end up doing things you don't want it to do, right? Such as, data duplication you didn't mean to have happen. And then you also think about, hey, if you're linking your automation, like in a CRM perspective, you're linking that directly to your LOS and you're using it as a part of your in-process. I think you have to be very careful there as well, right? Because what actually may happen is that another unexpected consequence, you may expose certain flaws in your process to your loan officers, your realtors, and your borrowers, okay? That's another thing that I noticed, that, sometimes, yes, you want to say, oh, yeah, I want to give, 100% transparency to my borrower. Do you really? Because if you don't recognize that you actually have flaws or, big inefficiencies in your process, you're exposing that to people. You don't want that to see.
You don't want the borrower to point it out.
Exactly, right? So that those are, within the CRM context, I mean, those are the only things that I would recommend to, executives. I think it's worthwhile saying to yourself, hey, I really feel like, we have a very specific process. If I'm not getting that from my current vendor, there are vendors that can give you that specific process you're looking for.
Yeah, I think that's some really good advice, especially about the data. I think that's one of those things that it's not the flashiest thing to do, or it's one of those things that's, to your point, it's almost like pulling weeds and tending your garden, but it is so important, and it's just a total waste of resources to not do that and to pay for, even just the storage of the data. You're paying, whether you're paying per user or whatever, to your point, a giant percentage of those users are, not there, then there's just no point, and you're completely wasting your resources. So
exactly.
Very good advice. So last question here as we wrap up, why should we always we always end the podcast with the talk about advocacy, and I think for lenders it's an easy conversation to have about why it's important to support industry groups like the California MBA and the MBA when it comes to advocacy. But from a tech firm perspective, what would you tell a fellow tech firm executive about why they should belong to groups like that?
Well, I mean, look, our revenue is based on the success of lenders, right? I mean, that's just baseline, right? So whatever your lenders are supporting, you really should be at least interested and aware. These are the topics, the regulations, the laws that are important to them, right? That'll have an impact on their ability to fund loans, which has an impact on your ability to make money yourself as a vendor. Okay, so that's a given. But I think California MBA specifically, right? I've been a part of California MBA for a number of years. I think number one, there's tremendous value in this particular group because of the way that you guys have created a space that really encourages people to engage, right? I mean, I think that's one thing I really like about California MBA. It always made me feel very comfortable, whether I was working, for a larger company or a very tiny company, right? I always felt very included. And the efforts you make to really bring vendors together with lenders, it's outstanding. I mean, I don't think you guys get enough credit for doing that. Beyond that, I think it's not just about vendors saying, oh, what do I get out of, joining up with the California MBA and meeting these lenders? No, it's also about what do I get out of meeting up with these other vendors, right? myself having been, representing an LOS company was a pretty unique position because we had to get along with a lot of different vendors, right? Our system had to plug into anywhere between 5 to 10 systems, for any given lender. So working with vendors, getting to know your other vendor peers is really important, right? And that's how business is done. I mean, we all know that the mortgage industry, again, very different than other industries. It's a very much relationship-driven business, right? You need to get to know who are your peers, who are your competitors, right? I mean, one of the things I love doing is really getting to know my competitors, not for the sake of, some sort of, subterfuge, right, or anything like that. No, let's face it, guys, you never know when your competitor is going to be your best friend, right? That's the fact of the matter, right? You never know, right? So,
It's a very small industry. Yep.
it is. And so, getting together, getting to know lenders, getting to know vendors, expanding your network, right? Being aware of the issues. We, as much as we look at legal issues, we're always looking at economic indicators, right? It's the same exact thing, right? We all want to know what the treasury is at on a daily basis. You should also know exactly what is the state of any sort of legislation or regulation that's going to bring up something like the new IRLA, right? Like the new IRLA, look, those are things that were a matter of advocacy at one point, right? You got to stay on top of this legislation. You look at the different things that are going to impact, especially things such as, regulatory data, regulations over data, right, and security. So as a vendor, it is very important to be aware of this and to be active, right? Make your voice known, right? You may not be a leading voice or have as much concern as lenders, but being aware of them and how it impacts your business is just as important.
Yeah, I think that's a great note to end on. Linn Cook, thank you for joining us today on Connect. Appreciate it. And we'll hopefully see you in person at a conference this year.
Sounds great. I miss all you guys, so hopefully we'll be able to meet in person soon.
Absolutely. And if you enjoyed the conversation, make sure and subscribe to us here on our YouTube channel. You can also find us on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. And we'll be back again next week for another episode of Connect. We'll see you then.